hand to back there, and I forgot. Good morning, everyone. I know Michael did some of this, but I do want to honor all the mothers in the house today. But you know, to mother means to nurture or to bring up. So some of you may not have naturally birthed babies, but you have been mothers. You have mentored people, you have served in Riverside Kids or youth. You have walked alongside those that have no one, and you have fostered, you have mothered, and today we honor all of you. And today we honor those whose babies are still yet to be held. And we honor those who have lost mothers, and we honor those who are in loss of relationship with their mothers. We want you to know that we see you and that we love you today. And we honor all the ladies of the house because of that, okay? Give it up for the ladies one more time. Well, I mean, what could scream Mother's Day more than a pink suit? Okay? All of you ladies look so lovely today, and my motto is, if you love it, wear it. So I'm wearing the suit today. You know, we've been in a series called Pants on Fire, like Michael said, combating the lies of the enemy. And when I found out that Mother's Day fell in the middle of this series, I knew what I thought I was going to speak on. And I had it in my head. I was settled. I was going to do it. And I was going to speak on feeling unqualified. But God slowly changed my mind as I started to pray on this and seek him for what he wanted me to share this morning. And I really felt strongly that he wanted me to speak on the lie this morning that you are unseen. You know, I have had several confirmations that this is what I was supposed to speak on, because I was kind of like, is that what you want me to do? I really liked the unqualified thing. I had some things going on in my brain about it. But is this really what you want me to do? And, you know, a few weeks ago, I was at Serve the City, and I was cutting hair in that salon truck. I cut hair, if you don't know. And some things happened. There's a long story, but I saw some ladies afterwards, Noe, he's doing the food truck over there, and I prayed for these ladies, and then we invited them to church, and they came to church, but there was something they said on the way out, and that is, they said, we've never been seen like this ever. Confirmation. And then my son and his friend were in my salon, and so they were just talking, and I was loving it because my son was actually talking. If you have teenagers, you know. It's like, hey, can you pick me up? Yeah, bro. You know? Yeah. I love you on the way out, okay? That's basically what you get. But my son was talking, and his friend was just kind of sitting there as I was actually perming his mullet, okay? Apparently it's cool right now. And I said, does he talk like this all the time and not let you get a word in? And his friend's like, he's never like this. We usually just sit there and don't say anything. He's never like this. And my son's response saddened me, but also confirmed something in me. He said, well, I stopped talking a lot because he used to talk all the time. You know the stories. And they go on and on and on. And you're just like, oh, yeah, you know. And then they forget what they're saying halfway through. But he used to talk all the time. And he said, I just remember that I just decided to stop talking because people told me it was too much or I was just showing off. He's like, yeah, like in youth and stuff, people just thought I was showing off. And people just thought I talked all the time, so I just stopped talking. It was best to be unseen. And it broke my heart as a mother, and I did apologize to him if we were the ones that said that to him, because I remember the same way as a child, I talked a lot. I was probably ADHD undiagnosed, but I talked a lot. I heard a lot from people more outside of my family, but, you know, will you just be quiet? Oh, there she goes, showing off. Here's the dramatics. Of course she's wearing pink. You know, so I would start to withdraw and started to feel unseen. But that became a comfort zone for me. So I knew that today it was time for me to share some of my journey through some of that. But you know, Jesus was the best example of truly, truly seeing people where they were at. The beggars, the lepers, the tax collectors, the lowest of the low, the adulterer, even the Pharisee, the disciple. And my favorite story is of the sinful woman washing Jesus' feet when he called Simon out for not seeing her and judging her. And Simon thought in his brain, surely if he was a prophet, he would know who she was and what she's done. And it said that he responded to his thoughts. But while he was responding to Simon's thoughts, he was looking at the woman because he saw her. You can read about it in Luke 7. Dig it apart. It says, while he was looking at the woman, he said to Simon's thoughts. He sees people. He was the best example. And he not only saw them where they were at, he saw who they were going to be. And we need to find our people. We need to get connected and not just wait for people to come to us. We need to go to them. We all need each other. And, you know, Michael and I can't get to everyone, but we're all in this together. And we need to find our people that can call out our potential in us. And as Michael talked about in our last summer series, we need to find our people because it's so, so important. But I think so many of us rely on others to see us. But God is saying today that I see you and I know you and I'm right here. You know, and many of you know my story. I share it a lot, and it's probably will come up in every message because this is my story. But I was a pastor's kid for 40 years of my life and then went right to being a pastor's wife after that. What I like to call the fishbowl life. But many believe that in that kind of a position, whether being a pastor's kid or a pastor's wife, that everyone knows who you are. And yes, they do, but for years, I believed that although people knew me and saw me, I was never really seen. Of course, they would see the wrong that I did, what I was supposed to be, but they never really saw me or knew my heart. I was always Pastor John's daughter. I was Andy's sister, but the dreams and the vision that were birthed in the depths of who I was made me Rachel, a called and a chosen daughter of God who had a plan and a purpose beyond my last name. And in Jesus' eyes, I was Rachel, seen, purposed, believing that and living it, though, is very, very different. Knowing it and living it, way, way different. And I'm sure in a room like this, especially on this Mother's Day, there are people in this crowd that feel unseen and overlooked. You feel those lives that we have been talking about for those past few weeks, and you feel unseen in your failure. You feel unseen in your addiction, and you feel unseen in your calling. You feel unseen in your family or your friend group. And the people you know, but do they truly see you? There were years and years that I felt overlooked and unseen. My dad was one that always called out the potential in me, but others had crept in over the years, and their voices seemed to drown out that voice and diminished what I felt God was calling me to do. It was as if someone had set a box next to me. And I just climbed in and I just closed the lid. The lies can do that. So you grab all these lies that you start believing and you put yourself in a box and you just close the lid. The lies that you can't do that because you're a woman. You only have ministry training, not a degree. You didn't do that well in school, so how can you do that? You can't have that position because looks like you only did because your dad was the pastor. And let me just tell you something. Pastors' kids are called too. It's not a nepotism thing. It's a God calling people thing. You say it. They used to say how I was too young, that no one would listen to me. You're an introvert naturally, so how are you going to do that? You don't look the part, and you deal with some anxiety and depression, so how are you going to deal with that from a platform? You've struggled with this and that and et cetera, and the lies and the lies and the lies, and then the things that I start telling myself as well, packed on top of it. I packed myself and all of those lies into a box, and I closed the lid for years. But during those years, I held those dreams in my heart, and I pursued Jesus with all that was in me, holding on to the promise that maybe one day I would be released, but not counting on it. This became a lonely season for me. I had to remove relationships out of my life. I had to remove friendships out of my life that were feeding those lies to make themselves feel better, and taking me down a road that I didn't want to be on. And there have been so many seasons in my life where I felt that way. The seasons where I felt unseen as a single adult trying to just figure out life, what I'm gonna do, where I'm gonna go. The years of being a young mom, even with some postpartum depression, trying to figure it all out. The years of raising toddlers, and you feel unseen in those moments. But then you realize those long days become short years. Then you're dealing with teenagers. The years as I watched others pursue their dreams, and the tears that I would cry, wondering if God really did see me. Did he see my dreams? Did he see the things that I wanted to do for him? Did he see that I just wanted it to be all for his glory? Did he see it? You see, you can be surrounded by people. Even in a room like this, you can be surrounded by people yet feel so alone and so unseen. And I think I placed so much of my validation and my security on being seen others instead of replacing it or relying on the fact that God saw me in each and every one of those seasons. You know, there's a brief interaction that Jesus had in John 1, and I don't know if you've watched The Chosen. I'm watching it slowly because I want to really digest it. And actually, a little tip, I watch it before I go to bed, and the scripture going into my brain, I wake up with scripture in my head from falling asleep to The Chosen. It's just a little tip, okay? But there is a scene where Jesus sees Nathanael, and it was so powerful to me the way they depicted it online. But it starts out with a scene with Nathanael under the fig tree, and has so much anxiety and pain, and he's crying and crying and crying, and then later it sees him being introduced to Jesus. So this is where it is at in John 1. And you see, at this point, Jesus is calling all of his disciples to come and follow him. And so in John 1, 43 through 50, it says this: the next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip, and he said to him, "Come and follow me." Philip was from Bethsaida, and Andrew and Peter's hometown. Philip went to look for Nathanael and told him, "We have found the very person Moses and the prophets wrote about. His name is Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." "Nazareth," exclaimed Nathanael. "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" "Come and see for yourself," Philip replied. As they approached, Jesus said to Nathanael, "Now here is a genuine son of Israel, a man of complete integrity." "How do you know about me?" Nathanael asked. And Jesus replied, "I could see you under the fig tree before Philip found you." Then Nathanael exclaimed, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, the King of Israel." And Jesus asked him, "Do you believe this just because I told you I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than this." You see, this was a moment where Nathanael's friends are trying to tell him about the Son of God. They're trying to tell him about Jesus, that this is who we've heard about. And here is Nathanael doubting. But then Jesus saw him and called out his identity. He called him a man of integrity in the middle of his doubt. And Jesus said, "I know you, I see you, and you will see greater because I'm choosing you. And Jesus does the same to us. He comes in the middle of our doubts. He comes where we feel unseen. And he says, I see you, and I'm calling you, and I'm choosing you. And I see you by your potential. I see what you can be. And he sees way more than we can ever imagine or think. You know, and I've started thinking about all that God has done in and through me these past few years. And the more I look at it, the more I think back to a time. And I realized there were 3 things that were happening during that time. So I want to steer away from the box analogy, because I used that for years, that I was shoved into a box. But I want to believe, and I really truly do believe, that I was actually placed into some really fertile soil. You see, we've heard the saying or the quote you see all over Facebook, sometimes you feel buried, but maybe you're planted. I felt buried with my dreams for years. I felt buried with my calling for years. I felt buried with my pain for years. And I think here's the first thing that we want to think about when it comes to being planted. And yes, I'm talking about flowers and everything today because I lead bloom. So we're going to talk about it. But you see, the first thing is, when something's being planted, is it has to go deep so the roots can go deep. But before the roots appear, it's just a seed, and that seed has to break. So the first thing that I was going through was the breaking. The process of a seed breaking, I like to look up nerdy things like this. The process of a seed breaking is called scarification, seed scarification. Any process of breaking the seed coat to make it permeable to water and gases is known as scarification. So I believe in those moments where we feel unseen that he has planted us, and that we are seen by a God who allows the breaking of the seed planted in us so it's more permeable and ready to receive the living water that he has and wants to pour into our lives. It's in the breaking that we feel him close. And it's in the breaking that things start to shift and things start to happen. It's where the preparation happens, and it feels lonely and it feels dark, and he's saying, no, I see you in those moments. Let my living water flow over you. Allow me to heal those places that need healed, and allow me to speak to you, and allow me to satisfy you only, so that when you are seen by people, the only validation you need is him. The breaking is hard. You know, we're going to talk about one of our favorite women today, seeing as it's Mother's Day. And that is in Genesis 16, we're going to talk about Hagar. You know, for time's sake, I want to tell a little bit of the story of Hagar. You see, we have Abraham and Sarai. Later, her name is Sarah. And God had promised them a child, but it was not turning out the way they thought it should. It was taking a lot longer than they thought it should. And if you read later on, she was 99, okay? But they thought, we're going to take things into our own hands, and Abraham can sleep with Sarai's servant Hagar. So Hagar gets pregnant. So Sarah then gets jealous, starts treating her horribly, to the point where Hagar decides to run away. And we pick up in Genesis 16:7. 7 through 11, the angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring water in the wilderness along the road to Shur. The angel said to her, Hagar, Sarai's servant, where have you come from and where are you going? She said, I'm running away from my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her authority. Then he added, I will give you more descendants than you can count. And the angel also said, you are now pregnant and will give birth to a son, and you are to name him Ishmael, which means God hears. For the Lord has heard your cry of distress. And then you go down to verse 13. Therefore, Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord. And we'll talk about that later. It was called El Roy, the God who sees, who had spoken to her. And she said, you are the God who sees me. She also said, have I truly seen the one who sees me? The well was named, I don't know how to say it, the well of the living one who sees me. It can still be found between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar gave Abram a son, and Abram named him Ishmael. You see, we see the angel come to Hagar, and she asks her, where have you come from, and where are you going? The Lord knew exactly where she was from. He knew exactly what she had been through, and he knew exactly where she was trying to go. But you see, I think God comes to us in those moments of feeling unseen and unwanted, and he asks us where we're at. He wants to know what truly is going on in our hearts. Yes, he already knows. He knows where we've been, and he knows where we're going. But he wants to hear it from us because he desires a relationship with us. And so in those moments of feeling unseen, he's coming to you and he is saying, I want you to talk to me. I want you to know that I'm here and I see you and I want relationship with you. And he cares about those things that are going on inside of us. And so he comes to us in those moments, in the breaking, in the hard, and he asks us the hard questions. I see it like my relationship with Michael. I know him well, and I could even know what he's thinking, but I want to know what is on his heart. I want to know what he's dreaming about. I want to know the things that make him excited. I want to know the things that he is going through. I want to know when he's hurting and when he's in pain. It's because I have a relationship with him, and I love him, so I want to know so I can either celebrate or comfort. And God loves us, and he wants to know, and he wants to hear from you, and he wants a relationship with you because it goes both ways. And notice then the angel tells her to go back. Now don't get things twisted. I will never, ever, ever be okay with you going back to an abusive situation or anything like that. Just a side note. But he tells her to go back to the hard. He's telling her to go back to the criticism, to go back to the jealousy, to go back to the trial, to go back to the dark. Because God was about to do something through Hagar. He had literally planted a seed within her, Ishmael. And so he was about to do something through her, but he said, you have to go back and you have to do the right thing. I think so often we try to run away from the breaking. We try to run away from the hard things. We try to run away from the trial. We start coming to church. Things start getting rough, and God starts doing something in us. He starts breaking us, and then we're like, I'm out. I'm done. But God is saying, don't run from the hard. Don't run from the trial, because I'm trying to do something in those moments, and I see you in those dark moments, and I see the tears that you cry on your pillow every night, and as his word says, he collects them in a bottle because he's going to do something with them. It's going to help heal those around you one day. So don't run from the breaking. He's making you ready to receive what he has for you, that living water. You know, the second thing I think that I go through, is that after the breaking, there's a moment where we burst through the ground. A seed will burst through the ground. And we start to see some light. So the second thing I think I went through was the bursting. Bursting through the ground is called a seedling. It's a small, fragile plant, and it will poke its way out of the ground and start growing towards the light, the sunlight. You see, there will be a moment where you will start to feel ourselves become a little more steady. Fragile, yet steady. And we start to realize that those roots are really going down deep. And all of a sudden, we start to see just a little bit of light. And as he was with you in the dark, you burst through and you start seeing him. he's always seeing us, but sometimes we need to start seeing him. As we sang this morning, turn your eyes. And as we start to fix our gaze towards him, we start to grow towards the light. And the roots just go deeper and deeper, and we just grow and grow and grow. We start to hear his voice. We start to get into his word a little more. We start to talk to him more, and we start to see a little direction in our lives, and we start to see a hope and a future that wasn't there. In Psalms 119, 105, it says, your word is a lamp to guide my feet and a light to my path. And this morning, I believe there are so many seedlings in this room. Just from our Armor of God class, we've had an amazing, amazing semester. It has been a hard semester. A lot of us have gone through the breaking in this. When you talk about the armor of God, and you start talking about spiritual warfare, the breaking will come, okay? But God is doing something in the women in that class, and he's doing something in this house. And there's been some breaking in this room. I know some of your stories, and there's been a lot of the breaking in this room, but I believe that many of you are about to burst forth, and you are going to be discipled into men and women that he's calling you to be. You know, back at home, I talk a lot about journaling. My class will know. I made them all go get journals. You know, it's a little security blanket for me. You know, I like to be reminded of God's faithfulness in my life, so I will go back and I will read those journals. And I was looking back as I was preparing this journal, and there was a journal from 2014. You know, there was so much unknown and so much we couldn't see. And in January 2014, I had talked about how we were feeling really conflicted as a family. Dad had started talking about retirement. It took him a while to retire. Dad had started talking about retirement, and I was feeling unsettled knowing that my dad was not always going to be my pastor. It's all I'd ever known. I was unsettled. There were so many unknowns, and God was starting to use me when it came to women's ministry. I was on the team at that time, helping them at the time. And remember, Michael was a teacher in 2014. We never, ever expected to be in this role. So in 2014, he was going to be a teacher till he was Medicare, whatever that age is. But you know, I was scared of the unknown and what was to come. And later in that journey, or in that journal, at the end of January 2014, I had a little bit more peace that God had our future in his hands. That he was the same God that had brought me through so much. And I wrote there that there were some character things that I was starting to conquer a little bit. You see, there was a seedling there that was starting to happen. But then you fast forward to February, and I wrote, this is what I wrote, the more and more I'm consuming myself with the things of God, the more excited for his destiny and what he's called me to. Standing in his presence daily is where I need to be right now, and seeking after a heart for him and the things of him. Every season that he has had me walk through, I want him to get the glory for it. I want to be the strong, confident woman knowing who she is, which means it's time to let some things go. I want to be other women's cheerleaders and not comparing myself to them. I know my dreams are big, but God can do big things. And then you fast forward to May of 2014, and this is what I wrote. Bloom Night is tonight, our very first one. I'm so excited to see what God is doing. God is moving in the heart of his daughters, and I'm speaking for the very first time, which I know is not my biggest strength, but I know God has given me something to say, so I'm going to say it. The bursting. You see, things that were dreamt of in the dark and then burst forth into light in his timing and not our timing, because he's always seen me. He's always known my story. You see, when we look back at Hagar, and in that moment when the angel tells her to go back, or when the angel talks to her, she says a Hebrew word in that moment called El Roy, which means, you are the God who sees me. She also says this, truly, I have seen the one who sees me. You see, she started to come out of that dark place. And she started to see him, and she started to realize that he had a plan beyond what she was thinking in that moment. And that all she had to do was trust that he was the one that had the plan. And he was going to see her every step of the way. So we go through the breaking, where he comes close to us in the dark, where he sees the depths of our heart. And we go through the bursting where hope seems to be on the horizon. And we start to see who he is. And we can truly look and say, truly, I have seen the one who sees me. But you see, then we have to start blooming. I didn't really want to use the word bloom today, but it was a B, so it worked. The blooming. And this is where God starts to reveal his plan, and others start to see it. It's where we start living in the fulfillment of God's promises over our life. And I think we have to realize something, though, as we are talking about this, that this is not a one and done thing. You know, we've been talking in the Armor of God class, and like I said, there's been an attack on so many people, but I know it's a part of the plan that God has for them. But it was also me that was going through some of that too. Because there's always something bigger, and there's always something greater. And I believe he's doing that in us. And so I don't believe this is a one and done process. You know, I spoke about pruning in one of my messages, and I remember people coming up to me and saying, yep, I've been pruned, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do what God has called me to do. And I want to yell and say, no, 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 no. Don't say that. There's always more pruning to be done. There's always more breaking to be done, because there's always more for us that God has for us. You see, the story of Hagar was not over. She went back and obeyed God, but years later, Abraham had another son, Isaac, and her son, Ishmael, and they got into a little scuffle, as they do. And it talks about it in Genesis 21, because then Abraham sends her away. So Abraham got up early the next morning, prepared food and a container of water, and he strapped them on Hagar's shoulders. And then he sent her away with their son. And she wandered aimlessly in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water was gone, she put the boy in the shade of a bush. Then she went and sat down by herself about 100 yards away. I don't want to watch the boy die, she said, as she burst into tears. But God heard the boy crying. And the angel of God called Hagar from heaven. Hagar, what's wrong? Don't be afraid. God has heard the boy crying, and as he lies there. Go to him and comfort him, for I will make a great nation from his descendants. Then God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well full of water, and she quickly filled the container and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy as he grew up, and he became a skillful archer. Here we are again, Hagar put in the position that she didn't ask for. It says that God heard the boy crying. He saw the boy under the tree. And the angel came to her again. And Hagar opened her eyes to a well full of water. He saw Hagar, and he heard the cries of her son. You see, he hears you, and he sees you. It's not a one and done thing. You see, there are times where God has to remind us that he sees us, and that he hears us, and that he wants to be close. He wants to remind us of the promise that he has for us. You see, God took care of Hagar and her son, and he believed he wants to take care of you. I truly believe that God can use us in every season, though. Whether we are in the breaking, or whether we are in the bursting, or we are in the blooming, that God can use us where we are, because he sees us and he knows us. It may look different in each season, but he knows where we're at. And so I'm coming to each and every one of you today. We're getting done early. The ladies need to celebrate. But I'm coming to you today, and I'm asking you where you are at and where you are going. Are you in the breaking? Are you in the bursting? You're starting to see the light. Or maybe you are in the blooming and you're asking God, what's next? Plant something new in me. I know it's going to be hard, but plant something new in me because I'm ready for something new. So he's coming to you today, and he's saying, I see you. Are you brokenhearted today? Because he's close to the brokenhearted. He sees you. Are you in the breaking today? He sees you. Are you feeling unloved on this Mother's Day? He sees you. Are you depressed today? He sees you. Are you anxious today? He sees you. Do you feel weak today? He sees you. Are you grieving on this Mother's Day? He sees you. Are you feeling unqualified on this Mother's Day? He sees you. He called you to be the mom that you are. Feeling unwanted on this Mother's Day, he sees you. Feeling not enough on this Mother's Day, he sees you. Feeling guilt and shame, he sees you. Feeling ugly, he sees you. Feeling too old, he sees you. Feeling too young, he sees you. Feeling fearful, he sees you. He's El Roy. He's the God who sees you. And so today, I'm going to ask this morning, whether you're in the breaking, whether you're in the bursting, wherever you are at this morning, I'm going to ask you to respond. If you're in the breaking and you're saying, God, I'm going to do this. I'm going to not quit. I'm going to keep holding on because I know that you have something greater for me. Whether you're in the bursting and you're like, God, yes, I'm starting to see the light, but I need you to show me. I need you to show me where I need to go. I need you to keep pointing me towards your face. Or you're in the bloom and you're saying, God, I'm in the blooming, you're using me, but I want more. And I want to be planted again. I want to go through the breaking again. I want to know what you have for me beyond this. And if that is you today, I want you to stand to your feet. And you're saying, God, whatever it is. So, Father, I thank you for each and every person in this room. I thank you, God, that you are the God who sees us, whether we're in the breaking, the bursting, or the blooming, God. But I pray for those people right now that are in the breaking. They're in the dark, God. They're the ones that are crying tears on their pillows every night, God. And you are the one, and you're saying, I see every one of them. For those that are in the bursting and they're saying, God, I want to do more for you. I want to do more for you. But God, you have to show me. You have to guide me. And it says, draw close to him and he will draw close to you. And for those that are in the blooming and you're being used by God, but you're saying, God, I want more. Ask God to plant something in you. It's not going to be easy, but ask him to plant something in you. So God, I come to you right now and I pray for each and every one that is standing. And I thank you for the breaking. I thank you for the bursting, and I thank you for the blooming. I thank you that you're never done with us, and that you see us in every moment of our lives, in the dark and in the light. And so on this Mother's Day, I thank you that you are El Roy, the God who sees us. In your name, amen. We're going to worship together on our way out.